Hey, Alex. Here's one. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our proclamation signing ceremony for Religious Freedom Week, June 22nd to the 29th. I'm pleased to be joined by a variety of guests here. I'm just going to go from your left to right with Adam Johnson, who's the chapter director for Ratio Christi, which is on the campus of University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And then we've got Marion Miner, who is the director for the Catholic Conference of the Pro-Life and Family Ministry. Karen Bowling, with the executive director of the Nebraska Family Alliance. We've got Rabbi Elie Tenenbaum from Chabad House. And then Deepak Gandhar, who is a principal at Anant Enterprises. Did I get that right?
Correct.
And you're also the chair of the board for Teammates Mentoring, right?
Correct.
Great. And then we also have Dr. Paige Ahmed, who is the chair of the Marketing and Entrepreneurship at the College of Business at UNO, and also a volunteer priest at the Hindu temple. So we've got great representatives here to be able to help talk to us about religious freedom. So religious freedom is the cornerstone of a free society. And it's the first right protected in the First Amendment, right? And that's no accident, because that is that cornerstone of religious freedom. It's one of the things that people have known for a long time. And in fact, one of the reasons why people come to our country is that religious freedom. You can think about, of course, the pilgrims and the other Europeans that came to our shores originally to find that religious freedom. And of course, Nebraska has always been a welcoming place to refugees, and many of those folks are coming here to find religious freedom. We can think, if you go back to the 1970s and the Vietnamese that came here after the fall of Saigon. And in fact, the first Vietnamese church of any Christian denomination was founded here in Lincoln. And the Immaculate Heart of Mary was the second church in the country of the Catholic faith to have services in Vietnamese. I think the first to have a freestanding building. Or you can think of the 1990s and the Sudanese who came here fleeing South Sudan and the Civil War strife and the religious persecution there. Leaders in Creighton at Creighton University have been welcoming the Karenni, who have left Myanmar because of the civil strife there. Or we can think of the Yazidis, who were being persecuted by ISIS in Iraq and came here to find religious freedom. And then, of course, more recently, we've been welcoming refugees from Afghanistan after the Taliban took over there. So the state of Nebraska has long been a place of welcome for those refugees, many of whom are seeking that religious freedom. And our state has benefited greatly from that religious freedom. You can think about, again, here in Lincoln, back in 1907, it was local churches that founded the city's People of Mission, which is still the leading homeless shelter here in our state, or in our country, or our city. Or 1917, Boys Town. In fact, it was Mr. Mons. Okay, you're going to have to help me on this. Father Flanagan, but it was Monsky. What was his name? First name? Edward Monsky, I think it was. They actually loaned him the money to be able to rent the first space for Boys Town. And of course, B'nai B'rith, a Jewish charitable organization, has been doing works of volunteer throughout our community to benefit people here, as well as you think about things like the Prison Fellowship, which is a ministry to be able to serve people in jail. Think of the Hindu temple and what they have done to help respond, for example, to the flooding in association with the Indian Association. We're very generous to the United Way to help us respond from those floods in 2019. But they've also been responding to the invasion in Ukraine or the natural disaster that occurred in India. So we see all of, and I don't want to forget Chabad, Omaha Chabad, their Thread of Kindness, which is a program that welcomes in travelers from other countries that are seeking medical treatment here and helping them with hospitality and language services and so forth. So we see that benefit of religious freedom all over the place, from organizations that came to our country. And in fact, our founders knew that this was important. John Adams wrote that our Constitution was made only for a more moral and religious people. It was wholly inadequate to the government of any other. And again, we recognize that here in Nebraska that religious freedom is best practiced when it's not being coerced or interfered with by the government. Article 1 of our Constitution says that all persons have a natural and indefeasible right to worship Almighty God according to the dictates of their own consciences. So this is something that is a part of our Constitution and law. And the notion that somehow our government should have a firewall between belief in God and government is historically inaccurate and deeply mistaken. Our coins say, "In God we trust." Our Pledge of Allegiance says, "One nation under God." We say a prayer before the opening of our legislature every day. We have, chaplains in our military and other government agencies. In fact, when Thomas Jefferson wrote about the separation of church and state, what he was concerned about was the government interference in religion. Our Constitution specifically says that there will be no religious test to take any government job. Something that some of our senators need that education on. When we saw not too long ago Senator Mazie Hirono from Hawaii and then Senator Kamala Harris, when they were questioning a judge candidate, Brian Vischer from here in Nebraska, and indicating that he was unfit to be a judge because of his Catholic faith and his association with the Knights of Columbus. Thank goodness there were people to stand up to be able to say, "Hey, that's not right. That's not how we run things here in our country." So I believe it was another Democrat senator who actually chastised him and said, "Hey, that's religious bigotry." And of course, then Brian Vischer was approved. Help me out with the name of that. Tulsi Gabbard, right? Thank you very much, Senator Tulsi Gabbard said that. So, said, "Hey, that's not right." And so, obviously, Brian was ultimately approved. But it does highlight that we always have to be on guard with regard to religious freedom and making sure that we are able to represent our religious beliefs in the public square. And so I've got a number of folks here today that are going to talk about that, about how we do that here in Nebraska, because we see the same challenges here in our own state. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn over to Karen Bowling, and we're going to have our guest speak, and then I'll come back and I'm going to sign the proclamations for Religious Freedom Week. So with that, Karen, can I turn it over to you?
Great. Thank you, Governor. It's great to be here and great to be with religious liberty leaders here in our city and state. Religious freedom is a fundamental human right, and the first among our rights to be guaranteed by the United States Constitution. It's the right to think, express, and act your deeply held beliefs to the dictates of your conscience. Religious freedom is the cornerstone of our nation, as Governor Ricketts has so well stated. Go with me on a journey here. Look back to the 16th century when our forebears loaded all their possessions. They risked everything. Yes, some were coming to look for gold, but many were coming for the pursuit of their religious freedom. They wanted to be able to worship and practice their religion without fear of the government. They wanted the freedom to worship according to the dictates of their conscience. Our founding fathers understood that the basis for economic and political freedom was the freedom of religion. Our history is a legacy that nations all over the world rival because we can freely practice the dictates of our conscience. The beautiful thing about the freedom of religion is you can or cannot have a faith. You have the freedom to do that. So I've been asked to address why at Nebraska Family Alliance we engaged in a petition referendum on the Fairness Ordinance to repeal it. And it was based on our freedom of religion and conscience. We recognize that Lincoln is a welcoming city and that everyone should be treated with dignity and respect. Unfortunately, from our perspective, This ordinance that the city council had passed was coercive and made you think one way, and you had fines if found guilty, and you could not exercise in the public domain, particularly in the workforce, your religious expression. I think it's important as we celebrate religious freedom to recognize that disagreement is not discrimination. Let me say that again. Disagreement is not discrimination. No person should be charged with devastating fines because they don't believe a certain way. I'm grateful that I grew up in a nation where I have the freedom to practice what I hold dear in my faith, and we must continue to work together to defend such freedom. The beautiful thing that happened with the Fairness Ordinance is that people from every area of the city gathered, including a very diverse group of people, including 72 different churches, Catholic, Protestant, non-denominational, different speaking languages, Vietnamese, Spanish, Ukrainian churches, but also friends from our Islamic Center participated. People of different political persuasions participated. This really has been an example when we work together to protect our cherished freedom of religion, things can be accomplished. This exemplifies the beauty in the founding of our nation, that our first freedoms were granted by God and not the government. Thank you.
I think it was Adam supposed to go next.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's all right, no problem. Any order is fine. Well, I'm really thankful, and I want to thank Governor Ricketts for celebrating our religious freedoms today. And I'm thankful for this opportunity to talk about how we, as a ministry, Ratio Christi, stood up for religious freedom and free speech at the University of Nebraska. So my name is Adam Lloyd Johnson. I grew up in a rural community just north of Lincoln, about an hour. Went to the university here in Lincoln in the 90s, worked in the field of actuarial science for about 10 years, and then I served as a local church pastor in South Carolina during my 30s. But when I was finishing up my PhD in philosophy, I moved back to Lincoln in 2018 to start a ministry at UNL called Ratio Christi. So Ratio Christi is a campus ministry that presents good reasons and evidence to believe that Christianity is true. As the chapter director, I, along with the student officers, lead the ministry, organize events, give lectures, and equip students to share why we believe that Christianity is true, and then engage respectfully with those who disagree. Like most groups, we have certain beliefs about reality that we think are true, and then we advocate for these beliefs. This is exactly what other groups on campus do, whether they're political groups, religious groups, or groups that focus maybe on social issues like abortion or racism. The bottom line is that every student and student group should have an equal opportunity to advocate for their beliefs in an appropriate, respectful manner. So what happened with our group last year is that we invited Dr. Robert Elie to give a lecture on campus. Elie was actually my philosophy professor at UNL way back in the 90s, almost 30 years ago now, where he served as a philosophy professor at UNL for 30 years. He's a world-famous philosopher, and he now serves as a professor at Notre Dame. Well, to help fund this event, to bring Dr. Elie in, we requested student activity funding to pay for the event. But the fund allocation committee at UNL denied our request because, according to them, UNL couldn't promote, quote, speakers of a political and ideological nature, end quote. This committee told us that to receive any funding, we'd have to, quote, provide another spokesperson with a different ideological perspective, end quote. However, the fact is that UNL has provided this student activity funding to other groups on campus for events that are clearly political or ideological without imposing this sort of requirement. It's flat out discriminatory for publicly funded universities to privilege some student groups over others with these event funds. Well, in response, we, Ratio Christi, filed a lawsuit against UNL. We've had a lot of support, including from Governor Ricketts and others. And I want to be clear that we didn't file this lawsuit because we hate UNL. No, in fact, just the opposite. We love our university. We want to see it flourish in its mission of providing quality education and generating new knowledge. We hope that this lawsuit will encourage UNL to make better decisions in the future so that all students on campus, whether they're religious, non-religious, political, ideological, all of them will continue to enjoy their rights of religious freedom and free speech. Thank you.
All right, now I'll go in proper order. My name is Marion Miner. I am here on behalf of the Nebraska Catholic Conference. So thank you to all of you for being here today. And we're grateful for the observance today of Religious Freedom Week. Religious freedom is the right to live in the truth of one's faith and in conformity with one's transcendent dignity as a person. It is based on, in fact, the dignity of the human person who has the capacity to know the truth and the duty to seek it and to live it out the best he or she can, in benefit not only to oneself, but to the benefit of other persons and to the benefit of the community as a whole. And to touch on a couple of recent Supreme Court decisions, as the court noted in the Kennedy case earlier this week, quote, respect for religious expressions is indispensable to life in a free and diverse republic, whether these expressions take place in a sanctuary or on a field, close quote. That is to say, in private or in public. And quashing this expression is not only a violation of freedom, it is an offense against society itself. And as the court reaffirmed for the third time in 4 years in the Carson versus Macon case last week, or third time in 5 years, I should say, quote, this is a paraphrase. It is perfectly constitutional to extend generally available benefits to religious institutions, including religious schools, and in fact to deny participation in such a benefit solely on the basis of religion is a violation of the First Amendment. And that has implications for school choice in the state of Nebraska. The Supreme Court has made that extremely clear now for the third time in 5 years, and we hope that that is something that is more fully appreciated in our state going forward in this debate and in other debates around religious liberty. So to close, the Catholic Conference stands for vigorous protection of First Amendment liberties, including the free exercise of religion for all people and all institutions of faith. We are heartened by these decisions of the Supreme Court and are thankful on this occasion, Religious Freedom Week, for the presence of all of you here today. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Rabbi Elie Tenenbaum with Chabad of Nebraska. Thank you, Governor Ricketts, for championing and continuing to champion this great cause of religious freedom, which has its roots obviously in the First Amendment, and again, it's been perpetuated throughout the state of Nebraska. Jewish people have been flourishing in the state of Nebraska for over 100 years thanks to the religious freedom offered here in the state as well as in the United States in general. I want to echo something that Governor Ricketts was touching on, the idea that the rule in the amendment, in the First Amendment, is freedom of religion. However, it's not freedom from religion. We all have a responsibility to tap into our faith, to grasp onto our faith and make sure that we are living a life that has faith in it and belief in God, etc. And some of the things that we can do as humankind to make the world a better place is, for example, the 7 Noahide laws, which were actually signed into United States law in 1992, I believe, It's laws for humankind, everybody with faith in God, and allowing a society and really a nation to flourish as it can in the best possible way with belief in God. Another important point is a great idea of a moment of silence in public schools where children can take a moment before school starts and think about life, think about deity, think about God, think about whatever it is that they may be taught at home as to what their faith might be, and that will lead to a moral and just society more than can be done with government control. And that's the important idea, the idea of each person having faith, each person connecting to their faith, not being controlled by the government, and again, freedom of religion, but it's also our responsibility to teach our families and friends around us the importance of belief in God and creating a true and moral society. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here, Honorable Governor Ricketts. Thanks for the opportunity. Dear friends, fellow panelists, Namaste. I'm Paige Ahmed, and I'm here to represent the Hindu Temple of Nebraska, based in Omaha. Today, we gather to celebrate the cause of peace, religious freedom, and most importantly, harmony. And I'm reminded of a quote by Marcus Aurelius, who is the last of the 5 good emperors of Rome, who said that he who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe. So he who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe. And the inspiration of this quotation is, of course, embedded in our own dharmic teachings. And today, for the cause of religious freedom, peace, and harmony, I am pleased to chant a liturgical prayer in Sanskrit, and I'll follow up with the English translation, following which my colleague Dr. Gangahar will talk about the Hindu faith. Om Dyav Shanti Antarikshagam Shanti Prithvi Shanti Apah Shanti Oshadhaya Shanti Vanaspataya Shanti Vishve Devah Shanti Brahma Shanti Sarvam Shanti Shantireva Shanti Sama Shanti Shantiredhi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May peace radiate in the whole sky as well as in the vast ethereal space everywhere. May peace reign all over this earth, in each country, in water, in all the herbs, trees, and vegetation. May peace flow throughout the universe. May peace be in the supreme being accessible to all. May all exist in peace, and may peace exist in all. Om, peace, peace, peace. This is the prayer every Hindu chants before they begin the day. So religious freedom, peace, and harmony go together. We stand here for all three. Namaste.
Thank you, Dr. Adidam. I'll explain later on why we invited Dr. Adidam from his class to say this prayer for peace. Allow me to say a few words about Hinduism, then it'll make sense to emphasize the message of the day of religious freedom. Hindu Dharma is also known as Sanatan Dharma, which means eternal truth or rules of life. Hindu Dharma teaches us a way of life so we can be free from pain and suffering. Sanatan Dharma got called as Hindu Dharma because it began from the valley of Indus River. Indus began to be spoiled and got being called as Hindu. Hence the name Hindu religion. How old is Hindu religion and who is its founder? There's no answer to that. Going back to thousands of years, when holy men and sages were trying to understand meaning of life, why did God create humans and send it to on this earth? They did prayers, they did meditation. After years of meditation and prayer, they got some wisdom, inner consciousness, inner awakening, and they then spread those teachings to their disciples, friends, and fellow beings. We call that oral tradition. Nothing was given in writing. It was from teacher to the disciple, that message of how to live a life free from pain and suffering. Scriptures, Hindu scripture like Vedas and Puranas and Upanishads, they were transcribed thousands of years later by the disciples based upon what they had learned from their gurus, their teachers. How old is Hindu Dharma? It's a matter of speculation. Archaeologists say anywhere from 5,000 to 15,000 before Christ. Hinduism believes in one supreme reality. One supreme reality, one absolute, which is beyond description. We call him the Brahman. It's hard to describe the absolute, but two words that succinctly describe, to a certain extent, are immanent and transcendent. But immanent means he's everywhere. He's in you, I, he, she, it. He's everywhere. Transcendent, the laws of nature, laws of physics, laws of life do not apply to him. He is indestructible. He is both the creator and manifest reality. If you see, when we greet people, we say namaste, bow our head. Folding your hands and bowing your head is not to the receiver. The message is divinity in me that exists in all living beings. Divinity in me bows to the divinity in you. You may have divinity of Jesus Christ, Yahweh, Mazda, Allah, whatever it is. We honor your faith and your belief. Namaste. That's what it means. Mahatma Gandhi, the father of the nation of India, said, a religion is not a religion if it does not preach tolerance. A religion is not a religion if it doesn't preach tolerance. One of the Hindu philosophers and very revered monk, Swami Vivekananda, when he came to Chicago, Illinois in 1893 to address the Congress of Religion, he gave a critique on this message. He said, tolerating is a very low bar. Try to tell your wife that I tolerate you. See what kind of answer you'll get. He said, you should be accepting other people's faith and beliefs and religion with the same vigor and passion the way you nurture your own faith. If we want a harmony of mankind, we must honor, respect other people's faith, unless that faith teaches violence. That was the message of Swami Vivekananda. There's no place for violence in this society, in civil society. So that's the reason every ceremony that's done under auspices of Hindu faith, we begin with a prayer for peace that Dr. Adidam did, and we end with the same message, peace, prayer for peace. In conclusion, I'd like to thank Governor Ricketts for celebrating Week of Religious Freedom. We are really honored to have First Amendment in our Constitution that gives religious freedom to all people of all faith, allows them to worship the way they feel appropriate, so we can all live in peace and harmony. We are very proud of the First Amendment, and we cherish their freedom. Thank you, Governor, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Deepak. Appreciate it. Thank you, Deepak, and all of our guests here. Thank you very much for sharing your perspectives on religious freedom today. Appreciate it. And as we know, the fight for religious freedom goes on. Marion referenced the Supreme Court decision from a week ago. We've had actually a couple in the last week that have continued to reinforce how the Supreme Court is protecting our religious freedom, whether it's discrimination against schools in Maine or allowing a teacher to be able to say a prayer on a football field in Washington State. These are all examples of how our religious freedom is being upheld, and that's important because we see that there is more discrimination against religious institutions. We can see the attacks on synagogues, churches, and so forth. So we know that we've got to continue to make sure we push back and represent our faith in the public square and uphold our religious freedom. So I want to thank all the guests here for being here today. And with that, now I'm going to go ahead and sign our proclamations for Religious Freedom Week. So bear with me a moment as I sign everybody's proclamation. I'm going to sign the first one here and give you a chance to get a photo op. Great, thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Rabbi Tenenbaum, thank you very much. Karen, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Nice, that's better. And last but not least, all right. Well, as always, we'll go ahead and open up the questions and answers on this particular topic, and then when we exhaust those, we'll take take questions on other topics. So, questions on Religious Freedom Week. Yeah, Aaron.
Jim Nolan tweeted earlier this week about the need to put God back into the classroom. Do you agree with those comments?
I think, I didn't see specifically what Jim Pillen was saying with regard to putting God back into the classroom, but I think as what was established pretty clearly in the Supreme Court is that even as somebody who works for a school, you have the opportunity to be able to take time to be able to pray, such as Joseph Kennedy as a coach there in Washington State after football games. And so allowing that sort of religious accommodation is one of the things that I think would be a good thing for schools to be able to think about how they can do that. I think Rabbi Tenenbaum was saying, maybe a moment of silence to give people a chance to reflect in whatever faith tradition they have.
Do you think prayer should be returned to the classroom and they should say a prayer at the beginning of the day like they do in the Capitol?
So the question was, should prayer be returned to the classroom? I think that would be up to local parents and school boards to make that determination, but I would point out that we begin each day of the legislative session with a prayer.
What kind of prayer should it be?
Well, again, I would leave it up to the local parents and school boards to decide how they would like, if they wanted to implement that, how they might do that. Yeah, Andrew.
Can you kind of explain that to people about the separation of church and state? How does that work in Harmon in that case?
Andrew's asking the question about the separation of church and state, and again, that goes back to a private letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote in 1802, where he was expressing concern about the government interfering with religion. And what our founders wanted to make sure is that the government would not push any particular religion or have a state-run religion, but allow all religions to be able to operate without coercion. And so I think that operates completely within what we're talking about here. Getting back to what Rabbi Tenenbaum said, it could be a moment of silence to let people reflect in their own faith tradition. So I think there are ways to be able to accommodate different religious freedoms while still allowing religion in the public square.
I guess how do you differentiate, what is a legitimate religion and what is not? I mean, would you allow a Wiccan type service in a school?
So again, getting back to what Rabbi Tenenbaum said, if you allowed, for example, a moment of silence, people from different religions would be able to reflect upon their religion in any way they saw fit.
Do you think a ban on abortion would be
So the question was, do I think a ban on abortion would be somehow an attack on religious freedom? I think that actually the abortion issue, while many people of faith are, pro-life, you don't have to be a religious person to believe that that's a child in the womb that needs protection. And so I would say the reverse is true. So I don't actually think it's specifically a religious issue. I think it's an issue about protecting the rights of an unborn child.
But
Yeah.
some religions believe that a child is a child once they're born. Other people believe a child is born in conception.
Right, so Andrew's asking, well, different religions believe different things, and again, that's why I don't believe the abortion issue is a religious issue, because I believe that while you can be a person of faith and have different perspectives on that, it's not a specifically religious issue, it's about protecting the rights of that child.
But some religions don't believe a child is a child until they're actually born.
Yeah, and so,
There's a difference.
so again, Paul, you're proving my point exactly. If some religions don't believe it's a child till it's born, that's why it's not a religious issue. It's about protecting the rights of the child. You may have a different perspective on when that is, but that's what the abortion issue is about. All right, any other questions on this issue? Any questions for any of our guests? All right, seeing none, I'll go ahead and dismiss our guests, but please stick around. If you stick around for a moment, we'll take a quick picture after we get done with the other questions. So thank you very much, everybody, for being here. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Can we stay here?
Yeah, please have a seat. Please stay close and we'll take a picture. So don't wander off, Marion.